Dark Souls 3 is right around the corner, and Mike, we just got to see a preview of it.
Yeah, we played about 3 hours, I think. They gave us 4, but we played about, a little less than that, and we got to see all 3 bosses and kill all of them.
That's right, and there was also a new area we've never been to before.
Yeah, so we went through the area which was in the beta and the stress test they released, which was Lothric's Wall, or Lothric High Wall, something similar. And then we went to the Undead Settlement right after that, which actually was very Bloodborne-esque.
That's right. So basically with our time with it, we found 5 pretty important things that we learned with our time with it. And we're going to go over those right now. First one is they've made a real nice hub area where everything is nice and contained. Now in Dark Souls 2, they kind of did that, but it was like an entire area. It was like a world, whereas this one's all contained within a little mansion house.
Yeah, they're calling it Firelink Shrine, and it's essentially, they have the home bonfire that you can warp to, and then you have the Firekeeper, which is the person who levels you up using souls. You have Andre the Blacksmith, so people that played Dark Souls 1 a lot will recognize the name and his face. And there's the Handmade Merchant, which is essentially the item seller, and you can get usable items, you can get just clothes from her, but by and large, you're going to be going to Andre for armor and weapon upgrades. So yeah, you'll be returning here a lot, just to whether you're leveling up or just infusing weapons, which we'll get into later, or just kind of need to go back and rekindle, as it turns out, you can do.
Nice. The second one is Hollowing is out and Embers are in. It looks like in this version, similar to the way you would consider Hollowing, which is when you die and you lose your humanity, and eventually you have to get that back so you can regain all your max health. Now it's called Embers, and it works a little differently.
Yeah, so when you die, which we did a lot during our time in the game, as most people do, you stop being what they're calling the Kindled One. This whole game, the story revolves around, these people coming back to reclaim the Ember or something similar, but when you awake at the bonfire, you have a little less max hit points, but also you don't have your Ember anymore, so there are items that you find that is called Embers, and you can either kill a boss to have your Ember restored, as it says, or use the Ember, which will fill your health up all the way, but you can only use one per life, so they're probably, they're going to be more important as you play through the game.
It also looked like something you could use as a last resort, so if you run out of all your Estus flasks and you're almost done with the boss, you can use an Ember to kind of fill up your health just to get those last few hits in and kind of finish it up. Another new thing that we found is more combat variety. It looks like comparable to previous games in the Dark Souls series. It's giving you more opportunities outside of your standard sword and shield.
Yeah, so those were largely focused around those kind of slow, methodical fights in Dark Souls 1 and 2, but now, even more so than in Dark Souls 2, which kind of opened it up, you can really just tailor to your playstyle. We were in the beta when you and I played a few months ago. We were kind of both trying out the dual wielding. We also, tried the typical sword and shield with the knight. I was the warrior, which is kind of the new barbarian in the demo we played. And
got the big axe.
Yeah, and I was pretty much just dual wielding the axe the whole time, just relying on my dodge and upping my endurance whenever I could when I was leveling up. So it definitely seems like they are kind of using Bloodborne as, the jumping off point to introduce a little bit more speed to Dark Souls, which I'm all on board for. I really like Bloodborne's combat, so going back to that mix of Bloodborne and Dark Souls 2, it looks really appealing.
Another major point that we should definitely talk about are the weapon arts and how they've majorly influenced and added another layer to the combat mechanics in Dark Souls.
Yeah, so this is another area where Bloodborne is kind of influencing Dark Souls moving forward, and I know that, the same thing could be said vice versa, but here the weapon arts kind of function like trick weapons did in Bloodborne, where they have an alternate attack. Essentially, you switch to two-handed stance and then hold the left trigger, and then it, some of them are buffs. Like if you have a battle axe, it's just this damage buff. The long swords actually have these alternate sweeping attacks, and they're really kind of adding another thing to consider to the combat because they're also limited. You have FP points, which it becomes this resource that you're managing, much like health. When do you use your Estus flask for health? Now it's when do you use the flasks to, save the FP points, maybe for the boss battle ideally, but every once in a while you're going to run into a huge group of people, so that damage buff with the battle axe might come in handy for just getting you to the boss. There's a big risk-reward factor to it. and it's kind of making the combat a lot more dynamic than it was in Dark Souls 1 and 2 and Demon Souls.
Yeah, it adds a little bit of strategy to decide when you're going to actually use that and how much to use. I know as a sorcerer, my double-handed weapon was a damage boost and a defense boost, and that's really, really important, and those change based on what weapon you're holding, right?
Yeah, so, the spears will have different ones, the certain wands will have different ones, the sorcerer's staff will have different ones. A lot are unconfirmed, but from what we played during the demo, the battle axe, like I said, had the damage buff. The long swords have those kind of alternate, more stylish attacks. You were playing the sorcerer, right? And
it just gives you a nice little boost for like a very short amount of time, like 7 seconds. And then finally, the last thing we really noticed was you can reinforce your weapon, but you can infuse them now. Which can change the type of damage that you want to add on to it. So your reinforcing is like your base stats, but the infusing is something new where you can actually add elemental damage.
Yeah, so you'll start picking up raw gems or like Titanite shards in the world. I found a few of each, and one of the raw gems just allowed me to do the refined battle axe, which was kind of like reinforcing it, but it just upped the damage itself. But I also found you can find fire gems, so your weapon will have permanent fire damage as opposed to just using fire paper or the resin in Dark Souls or Bloodborne to give it temporary buff. So that could really, even more so like with the character class and this combined, you could really make like a specific character with like a fire axe, and like that's going to do a lot of damage to enemies with those weaknesses. So I'm looking forward to seeing how many different ones there will be, because I only saw 3. There was like the refined battle axe, there was the fire axe, and then the other one was pretty, just regular reinforcement.
Sweet. So those are the top 5 things that we learned that we think you guys should know about. If you guys saw anything else and you're interested, let us know in the comments what you are most excited about for Dark Souls 3. And you guys can expect to see that coming out April 11th on PC, PS4, and Xbox One. Thanks a lot, Mary.
Thanks, Mary.